you so much, Dr. Steph. Thank you for joining us this evening. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. And thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, thank you for being here. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey. I want to just jump right into it.
Sure.
What is a naturopathic doctor, first off?
Yes. So a naturopathic doctor is a doctor that blends modern science and natural and traditional healing together. And really, I'm trying to get to the root of why you're feeling the way you're feeling. So instead of covering up your symptoms with pharmaceuticals, I'm trying to figure out why it's happening. And the way I do that is through things like with nutrition, herbal medicine, lifestyle changes, and sometimes acupuncture.
Wow,
That's what a naturopath
that's
is.
amazing. Something that I definitely need to check out myself. And how did you begin this journey yourself?
Yeah, so I would say actually it wasn't a straight line or a straight journey where when I first entered university, I actually didn't even know what a naturopath was. I wanted to be a conventional medical doctor. And as I started to explore that more, I realized that my values and the values of that type of medicine just didn't align. So then I started exploring different options. I thought I was going to be a dentist, but then just before I was going to enter dental school, naturopathy came up. And once I saw that, it's just, I felt like the universe was telling me, like, no, this is what you're meant to do. And I just felt deeply connected and passionate about it. And there's been no turning back since.
That's beautiful, honestly. And I think that's just going back to who we are as people of color. We were speaking a little bit about this before. We have those innate values in our ancestry. You know, my grandmother would tell me to drink bush tea,
Yes.
or certain plants would give us certain healing properties. So it's really amazing that you've gotten back to this and kind of stepped away from the westernized idea of medicine. So I want to, first of all, welcome again, everybody. Thank you for coming. I hope you guys are doing well. I want to launch a poll right now to ask you all, have you ever seen a naturopath? So let me do that right now. Please let me know, is this something that you've ever experienced? Amazing. So it looks so far pretty 50-50. Wow.
That's good.
Yeah, that's actually really good because I do have a family member that has been to a naturopath, but for myself, again, it's never been a thing that I've actually even fully thought of. You know, now that we have Google and stuff, I'm like, let me Google, see what I need for my stomach. Or we have our own remedies within our family. Like when I'm sick, I drink lime, honey, and maybe a little bit of rum to kill the cold.
I know that one. I know that.
So, you know, we come up with everything as a Caribbean culture. So, yeah, it's definitely something I think I'll eventually look into. So now as a naturopath, you've chosen to focus on women health, more specifically PMS and hormones. Why is that?
A big reason for that is it's actually personal because I, as a woman, struggled a lot with my periods. Like for me, I had really, really bad cramps. And I felt like I was super moody. And like I'm sure many of you have experienced, you go to your doctor, you tell them, and they normally give you like two options. You either go on the pill or just take like a painkiller, and then they just, move you along the way. And for me, it was like, I want better options and I want to know why this is happening and what I can do to prevent it from happening. So that was really a big catalyst for me to really educate women and let them know that there are other ways to help and heal their hormones, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be pharmaceuticals. And then another really big thing that led me to focus on this was when I was actually diagnosed with a fibroid. And fibroids are typically things that happen in women that are a little older, but I had a diagnosis at 25. So that was a big, really big wake up call where I'm like, okay, like something is definitely off with my hormones. And that led me down the path of naturopathy. And then women's health is because I've experienced so many things. I'm like, I really want to help a lot of women with that. So
amazing. And I think a lot of what we do, even for myself, it's based on my experience. So thank you for really taking that experience and finding a way to heal others through such a difficult time, I'm assuming.
yes.
Um, so according to research, 3 in 4 women are affected by premenstrual syndrome,
Yes.
PMS. What is PMS?
So PMS is symptoms that are happening the week or two before your period. And many of the symptoms, there's actually like 150 that have been reported. So there's a lot, there's like a laundry list of symptoms. And I'm sure there are ones that many of us have experienced. So things like changes in your appetite, tiredness, acne, painful breasts, changes in your weight, cramping, all of those things are things that can happen before your period. And a big reason that's happening is because there's an imbalance between two of our major hormones. So as women, we have two hormones, one of them being estrogen, and then the other one is progesterone. And the two of those are in a really delicate balance with each other. And when they get out of balance, that's when the symptoms can start showing. So PMS is something that, yes, I would probably say all of us, I know it says 3 and 4, but I almost imagine it's like all women have experienced. And what that actually is saying is that there's an imbalance in your body. So that's a big thing that's going on.
Okay, so you said all women. So there's no certain type of women or a certain demographic of women who are most likely to experience PMS pain? Would you say that, or?
To be honest, like I would say, in terms of statistics, I'm not aware of there being a group that has it more than others, but I would say just from clinical experience, women that might not have the best access to certain foods are having a more stressful time with life. Those are usually things that could really trigger PMS. So I would say they might have it more so than others.
Yeah, and I read something where they said that premenopausal women were experience PMS. Can we speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so before menopause, so what menopause means, just so that we're on the same page, menopause happens when you actually stop your period. So as women, in terms of like our actual life cycle of hormones, there will come a time when you won't have a period anymore, and that's called menopause. So just before you enter menopause, maybe like sometimes it could be up to 5 years before that time, your hormones really start fluctuating. And often what happens is those fluctuations can really show up as PMS for those women because they're getting their hormones are getting really out of balance. So that's usually what's going on just before menopause.
Okay. Now, what is premenstrual diasporic disorder?
So PMDD is another form. I would say it's almost, to put it in the most simple terms, is almost like PMS times like 1,000. So yes, there's PMS, but then PMS can be like really, really, really bad, where some of the more telltale signs for that is really extreme changes in mood. I think that's probably one of the most extreme ones, where some women, when they enter that time before their cycle, they can feel very, sometimes they can feel suicidal, or they can feel major depression or major mood swings, where yes, some of us have mood swings, but these ones are very, very extreme, and it will start really affecting your day to day. So I would say that would be the major difference for that one.
Yeah. And me and the co-founder Kim, have talked about these things just as women, just having conversations about what we experience. And, you know, there's times where either myself or her have to really reevaluate what we put in our bodies during that time to make sure that we have the best experience during that time.
Yes.
Now, before I get to the chat question, I want to go back to the first time we spoke, Dr. Steph. You said something really beautiful to me.
Mm-hmm.
You said that having your period and sometimes experiencing PMS should be seen as a gift.
Yes.
Can you explain why you said that?
Yeah. You guys are probably thinking like my period is a gift. Like, no, like this is something that can be annoying. But really and truly, our periods, the reason I'm saying it could be a gift is because our periods are a way of showing us what's going on in our health. So if we're experiencing these symptoms like PMS, it's a sign that our body is trying to talk to us and tell us that there's something unhealthy that's happening here. So it's better to pay attention. So our periods can be a gift to let us know what's going on in our health. I almost say it's like when we have our period, it's almost like our report card for our health. It lets us know how good things are going. If there are symptoms, then that's a sign that we need a little help in certain areas.
Yeah, that's amazing. Honestly, I started looking at it a little differently after that conversation, because I know for myself it's like, oh, it's heavy, it's a burden.
Yeah.
But you know, I have to remember that there are women that sometimes can't experience these things because they're not even getting their cycle on a regular basis. So I have to be grateful for what I have.
Yeah, and I think just to like expand on that more, I think a big part of it too comes from society, and there's a lot of period shaming, and there's a lot of just rhetoric around periods being annoying or periods being a problem when they are a part of us, and it could be a sign for us to either work on things or to also just honor that experience we have.
Yeah, that's so right. That's so right. Now, I want to ask those who are joining us this evening, can you let us know in the chat, what are your experiences with PMS, and what are the symptoms that you usually have that goes along with it? For myself, I don't think I experience PMS. My mood is a little erratic at times, but it's really just I get tired, a lot of fatigue to the point where it's almost like, is it my iron? Is it because I'm losing? Like, I don't know why, and I've never really fully investigated. And I know that my cycle is very similar to my mom's and my aunt's and my daughter. You know, so it's like we all experience the same thing. So it's would be really interesting to see what the underlying reason is for it.
Yeah, and every woman can experience it differently, and then sometimes, yeah, some women might not necessarily experience that much PMS. Where if you are starting to work on what I call like the hormonal foundations, and you have those things more or less in line, then PMS is less likely to happen. Like for me, like I was saying, cramps used to literally just take me out, and now I don't have cramps, where it's just like my period comes, and then it goes. I don't have to, take time off of work or really shift around my schedule like I used to before.
Wow. So I'm just seeing in the chat here, Renelle says bloating and fatigue. So yeah, I can completely sympathize with that. That's something that I dealt with quite often, which was something that was very difficult to, navigate at times, especially when you have a full life you still have to deal with. You still have to perform at work. They're not gonna say like, oh, you're on your period this month. Okay, stay home. That's not gonna happen. So it's very difficult to navigate, especially when it's not severe symptoms. Somebody else said short temper and needing more sleep.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. What else are we seeing. I experience cravings, mood swings, bloating, fatigue, cramps. Some months are better than others. And this is like my bestie. So I know she deals with all of that. This is Kim from the Village. Yeah, it's not easy,
No,
honestly.
it's definitely not. And especially like with something like COVID on and happening, that's like a big shift. And then also the Black Lives Matter, what's happening right now, like it's very traumatic. So those
Yeah.
things could be influencing us in ways that we might not even have consciously realized.
Hmm. Now, somebody said something that was really interesting to me. They said extreme pain on the left side, and I've considered removing my uterus. Dilaudid normorphine stops the pain, and I avoid pharma. Can you speak to
Um,
that a little bit?
so yeah, something like that, especially if pain is a little more one-sided, that's when I would go to your medical doctor, and it would be important to do like an ultrasound just to make sure to see if there's any like cysts, fibroids, or polyps, because sometimes if they are overgrowing too big, that's when one-sided pain could start happening. And then depending how big it is, even though I am a naturopath, sometimes it might be necessary to have things removed surgically, depending on how big it gets. So
Yeah.
that, Jamila, I would say if you haven't already, it's probably best to go to your medical doctor and get some an ultrasound and see might be happening there.
Yeah. 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 That's definitely something to check out. And I'm really sorry to hear that you're dealing with it.
Yes.
Um, Based on the client experience that you've had in the past, what are the most common symptoms, physically and then emotionally?
I would say for physical, the most common would be period pain, so significant cramping when you have your actual flow. And then the next one would probably be changes in your digestion. So either getting like bloated, diarrhea, or constipation. I would say those are probably the most, so the pain and the changes in digestion are probably the most common for physical. And then emotional, I would say the mood swings slash like irritability is often a very, very common one where women notice that they become more snappy, more short tempered, or they feel emotional in the sense where they're crying when it's not appropriate, or it's just not, doesn't match the magnitude of whatever they just experienced. I would say that's probably the most popular emotional symptom.
Yeah, and it's interesting just as a woman or, anybody that experiences PMS, it's one of those things where it's hard to navigate because I don't want to blame
Mm-hmm.
my mood on PMS to my partner because
Yeah.
he's like, oh, don't blame it on that. Maybe it's because you're tired or maybe it's because of something else. But I'm like, no, these things are real and
Yes.
it's okay and it's not sexist to say. So it's very interesting that we have to navigate um, how we speak about our periods.
Yes. Yeah. And that one, that could be challenging too, because sometimes, yeah, women might be like, it's not my period, but like it might actually be, and there's nothing wrong with that. Where again, it could be a sign, just your body trying to tell you, like, hey, this is happening. And your hormones are imbalanced, and that's why it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fully normal. And I think we should embrace it, honestly.
Yeah, I honestly, again, that kind of goes back to like the society thing of anything with periods. It's just like we don't talk about kind of it. That's something that women deal with, and they should keep that to themselves.
Yeah, and it's not it shouldn't be that way. And I think it's the beauty of millennials is we're trying to normalize these things. We're really trying to work on making sure that women's health is not something that needs to be kept secret. Mental health, the whole plethora of health and wellness. So
Yes.
I'm really appreciative of that. So I want to launch another poll where I want to know if you all track your cycles. I do not. I kind of know when they're happening. Sometimes they catch me by surprise, but for the most part, um, I don't. I don't use any apps myself. I'm gonna launch it now. And what do you say to tracking? Do you suggest that we should track? Yeah.
I do recommend it. It's one thing that I recommend to, especially if a patient's coming in with hormonal, like a hormonal concern, to start tracking. Because sometimes we could kind of just get caught up with life and things go by, and we might not have connected what we're feeling around whatever phase we are in our cycle. Because our cycle has different phases, and in those different phases we can experience different things.
Yeah, that's real. So it's beautiful to see that 92% of the individuals in this chat have been tracking their periods. So I need to get on my best behavior and get on that, to be honest.
Kim is saying the Flow app, that's like one of my favorite apps to use.
Nice.
So
Nice.
awesome.
Now, as the founder of Hormone Reset Method,
Hmm.
what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so the Hormone Reset Method is a program that I created for women so they can understand why their hormones and periods are acting the way that they are, and then what they can do about it. So I go over what I call like the fundamentals of hormonal health. So in order for our hormones to be balanced, we really have to start looking at things like what we're eating, what, like how we're feeling. So in terms of like stress, that's another really important thing. And then for other things like our detox and digestion pathways, all of those things are things that doctors never talk about, but they're very important when it comes to our hormones, because they all play a certain role to make sure our hormones are getting produced at the levels that we need them to, and also getting cleared out of our bodies as they should. So that's why I created it, because I found that most of my patients, or when I talk to women, they kind of, they know that they might have a hormonal imbalance, but it's like, what do I do? What do I do next? So that's why I created, so it's an online program where it walks you through how to actually get those balanced hormones.
Amazing. I actually love that. And um, what do you find is the result after that? How have you gotten any feedback as to how this has gone for?
Yes. So I would say most of the women, if they really keep up with, especially nutrition, I find that that one's like a big one. If they keep up with that, then they notice a reduction in their symptoms. Some women, things like disappear, but they really notice that reduction. And because they are tracking, so that's part of like the program, teaching you how to track your cycle. Because they're tracking, they're able to actually compare how they're feeling after going through it versus how they felt before.
Amazing. So you just brought up something really, a key point that I definitely want to hit tonight, and that's nutrition and also the lifestyle change. So let's talk about natural solutions to treat PMS. As a naturopath,
Yeah.
what are your top recommendations?
Yes. So yes, my first recommendation is to really hone in on nutrition. So a big reason PMS is happening is because of inflammation.
Mhm.
And when inflammation is going on in our body, it can show its face through PMS. Because what inflammation does is it sends our hormones out of whack. And then when our hormones are out of whack, then the symptoms start showing up. So a big way that we can tackle inflammation is through what we're eating, because we eat multiple times a day. So that's multiple opportunities to either feed inflammation or decrease it. So one major thing that I tell women, and I might sound like, oh, we already know this already, but it really is to start eating more fruits and vegetables. I know a lot of us know that's what we're supposed to do, but it really can be very helpful because the different nutrients in there will help our hormones, help build them up, and it'll also help cool inflammation. And then another thing I would say is to start looking at things that are actually causing inflammation. So another top thing that I would say to start looking at is your dairy consumption. So dairy is a quite inflammatory food. And if you're experiencing things like PMS or hormonal stuff, then to start looking at your dairy consumption and reducing it, because it can be quite inflammatory.
Yeah, so I want to know from those who are joining us tonight, what are your food cravings, especially when you're experiencing PMS during your cycle? So you were, while I wait for those answers, I want to talk a little bit about those foods to avoid. So you mentioned dairy. Is there
Yes.
anything else that we need to avoid during this time at all?
hmm I would say sugar, and that's usually one that can
Oh.
be a tough one, 'cause especially during this time, you might have those cravings.
Mhm.
But sugar is another thing that can be very inflammatory. Um, excuse me. So what I would say is you can still eat certain carbs that will give you that same almost like sugary fix without causing inflammation. So start looking at having things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, plant like if you're of Caribbean background, like fry some plant or eat some plantain. Like that's something that would be better than eating. I know like chocolate's a big one, but it'd be better to have plantain than to eat the chocolate. Or another thing that it's like to give like an actual product idea is Smart Sweets. I don't know if anyone has heard of this company. They're a newer company that came out and they make like gummies
Oh
where
yeah.
it only has 3 grams of sugar in the entire bag. So like you can like knock that entire bag and you should be fine in terms of like sugar and not causing inflammation.
Yes, I have snacked on those at work. I think they're like in a little white baggie, correct? And
They're well, they have different color. They have different
yeah,
flavors and coloring now, so they've
amazing.
definitely gotten bigger over the years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I'm seeing in the chat is exactly what I do and what I shouldn't do, which is eat chocolate, anything salty and sweet. A lot of people are craving salty foods, hot Cheetos, chips. I could sympathize with that completely.
Yes, yeah,
And I
and
think it's interesting. Are we conditioned this way to like want these things, or is this like a real, like, what is the medicinal reason why we're craving these things?
yeah. So to be honest, I feel like it's a little bit of both. So when we're in, just to like take a couple of steps back, I would say there's two major phases of your cycle. So like between when you have your period and when you ovulate is called your follicular phase. That first half of your cycle is usually when you're feeling good, more energetic. You might feel like more, your skin might be clear. You feel like almost just you feel good. And then after you ovulate, that's called your luteal phase. So that's usually when PMS stuff starts happening. So in that phase, our hormones shift a little bit. So you might actually do have cravings for more carb-rich foods. But with carbs, there's almost like there are different types of carbs. So I would say it's better to have the ones that are in the form of like vegetables as opposed to going for the super sugary refined ones. So that would be like a swap that you can try and make, or even just like fruits. Fruits are forms of like better carbs. So if you're feeling those sugary cravings, it's better to eat some grapes. I know it might not be the same, but it's better to be eating some grapes or an apple or whatnot than to be having like a bag of candy. So there is like an actual biological component to that, but then you do want to try and make the better choices in the types of foods that you're eating.
That makes a lot of sense. And somebody said that they've been juicing in previous weeks before it came. They noticed that their mood swings were prevalent more so than before, but bloating and acne, the pain wasn't as bad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Whole food, plant-based over the past year was their diet, and significant changes have been found since changing the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, I'm confused as to why my mood swings are so high.
Mm-hmm. So if you kind of have nutrition down more or less and you're still experiencing some like mood swings, that
Mhm.
can be indicative that you might have some what I call like a nutritional deficiency. So yes, you're eating, better choices of food, but maybe for whatever reason your body needs a little more. Like with moods, you really want to start looking at your B vitamins.
Mhm.
So something like you can talk to a naturopath and see if something like a B complex or B6, it would be helpful for you. Because sometimes that could be a missing link. For even if you have nutrition down, sometimes there are times where we do need to, or we can supplement to kind of just bring our body back to balance.
Amazing. I wouldn't have even thought of that, to be honest. I think there's so many times that I've been told to take certain vitamins. Like, I come from a medical family. My stepdad's a doctor and my mom's a nurse. And she's like, okay, now take B12 and folic acid. And I'm like, okay, why am I taking this?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
you try all these cocktails just to figure out like what's best for you. But I do think that it's super important to go to a naturopath so that they can create something that's meant for you in
yeah.
your. Mhm.
Yeah, because that's the thing where like sometimes maybe it's B vitamins, but other times for mood swings, maybe you might benefit from having some herbs to further support your hormones to help balance you out. Or sometimes you might need both. And that's the thing with like natural health. Like, yes, it is natural, but there's almost like an art to it, to be choosing the right things for you, as opposed to, just grabbing something off the shelf from a health food store because it says like women's or like hormone formula. It might not necessarily be the right one for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, one of our community members had asked, they wanted me to ask you because they experienced digestive issues during their menstrual cycle. Can you speak to why that happens?
Hmm. So it can depend on the type of digestive issue. But what happens is, so let's say you have like constipation. So if you guys remember, I was saying that we have two major hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Now, sometimes our estrogen can get too high. So it's almost like it's too much of a good thing. And when it becomes too high, sometimes that can influence something like constipation. So if you're getting constipation, that could be a sign that your estrogen is too high. And what that means is you probably need some help to just like detox it out. So that's in terms of constipation. If you get like, let's say diarrhea, it could be another sign that your inflammation is high. Because when inflammation is high, certain like little chemicals in your body get released, and it tells your digestive tract to actually move a lot faster than it normally should. So if it's moving a lot faster than it normally should, then it's kind of saying like, I need to get this poop out faster, so then it comes out looser. So
Wow.
those digestive concerns often is because of a hormonal imbalance.
Yeah. Now, what would one to do to offset that when it comes to taking supplements? What's helpful for combating PMS symptoms?
Mm-hmm. So I would say like I have a couple of go-tos, and this is where again it can be very unique, because some women have too much estrogen, but some women might not have enough of progesterone. So depending on what you have, there's different herbs that can support you. So just to like throw out some common ones. So there is a herb called Vitex or chaste, which has traditionally been used to be very balancing for hormones. And that can help a lot of women with PMS. So I'd say like that's usually like one of my go-tos depending on what's going on. But then there's also other herbs, like there's another herb called Angelica, which is another very hormone related herb, and then also another one called wild yam. So that's usually when I would say, yeah, like go to a naturopath or go to a herbalist, and they could probably let you know based on your symptoms which one is the best one for you.
Amazing. I'm just noting these down really quick because I think this is something I'm like, you're the one hosting this. I'm learning too. So I'm like, yes, I need to know all of these. So thank you so much for that. And I'll be sure to share it with the community. So if you feel like anything was said too quickly, you're going to
Yeah.
have all the resources you need. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, and yeah, let me know because I do talk a little fast. So yeah, let me know.
No worries, no worries. Now, after tonight's conversation, I'm sure many women will be interested in seeing a naturopath. What should one expect during the first visit?
Yes. So during the first visit, it is like around a 75-minute visit. So it is a longer visit than traditionally if you went into your own medical doctor. And the reason for that is really because that's the time where your naturopath is really going to try and understand where you're coming from, things that you do on a day-to-day, what your lifestyle is like, and then any other past medical history that you have. Because all of those things are important for us to understand what might be happening at the root. So within that 75 minutes, I would be asking a lot of questions and I would be doing a lot of listening just to understand where you're coming from. And then from there, the naturopath would offer their ideas and a treatment plan of what they think would be helpful in the moment. And then after that, usually after the first visit, you would have follow-ups to check in to see how you're doing on their recommendations and then building on top of that. Because with natural health, sometimes it takes time. So we kind of have to like set like a little foundation and then slowly build on it, as opposed to just giving you like one thing and then it's like one and done and it's all gone. Because when we think about it, a lot of things with our health, it was created over years and years or months and months. We can't just reverse it within like one visit. So
That
that's
makes a lot of sense. And I feel like it's really important to stress that when you see a naturopath, it's likely going to be a lifestyle change in order
yes,
to see results.
yes,
So it's not like when we go to the doctor, the regular doctor, and we're like, hey, my stomach hurts. All right, take this medicine and continue doing everything else you're doing. And that's definitely not the case. If you're really dedicated to doing things naturally and healing naturally, it's going to take some work and it's going to be a definite change.
yes.
Yeah.
And and within all of that, I would say for me personally, a big part of when I'm, speaking and helping patients is to educate them and let them understand their bodies more and learn what's happening. Because then once you learn what's happening, you have more knowledge and more power to make decisions later on, as opposed to kind of being like, oh, I don't know what's happening. Like, I don't know what to do. You start learning more about your body, and my hope is that you would leave empowered to take more control of your health.
Yeah, definitely. So how does one prepare for such a visit?
So really, it's most naturopaths. You would have like an intake that you would just fill out, and then if you had any like blood work or labs done by your doctor, it'd be helpful if you brought those so we can get a better understanding of what's going on, because as naturopaths we are still trained in conventional medicine with like labs and all that stuff and diagnostic testing. So if you bring those in, it'll help us get a bigger picture of what's going on. But other than that, like just you go in and be willing to talk about what's going on.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much again for um, your wealth of knowledge on this. And I feel like it's opened up a lot of our eyes when it comes to what to do to heal.
Mhm.
What to do to heal and not to be feel ashamed of feeling this way. And there are ways to help heal ourselves naturally. So I
Mhm.
really want to open the floor to the audience. let us know what kind of questions you have for Dr. Steffe. I have none myself. I think she's answered everything that I've needed, but I know a lot of you might be experiencing PMS in a different way and might need some specific help. So please don't feel shy. Be sure to ask anything that you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go and to ask us, because again, like I could talk about this stuff, like I was telling Shanelle and Kim, I could talk about this stuff all the time, so feel free to ask.
That's real. And in the meantime, while everybody's just putting in their questions, I want to know, when should we marry traditional medicine and naturopathy
Mm-hmm.
to cure severe symptoms?
Mm-hmm. I would say like I might be biased, just because I am a naturopath, but I think it would be helpful for everyone to have that at all times if they can. Just because, like I was saying, there are times where you do need to go to your medical doctor and you might need more emergent care, but then also your naturopath can help you figure out why certain things might have happened, and offer you some tools to help you along that journey.
That makes a lot of sense. Um, do you have any ideas as to what a go-to toolkit should be for a day when you're experiencing debilitating symptoms?
Mm-hmm. I would say, if you can, rest. Like I think sometimes too, as women, we just try to push through, where at that time it would probably be more beneficial to just honor and listen to your body. And if it means, if you can, just chill out that day, that would be very helpful, just to give your body some rest. And then with that, it back to like nutrition, eating what I call nutrient dense food. So having fruits and vegetables, some kind of protein, and some kind of fat with your meals. Because during those times you want to go with the junk food. You want to go have McDonald's, or you want to go have the candy, where it's great in the moment, but all of those things will trigger inflammation, and it's just going to make your symptoms worse.
Wow. Things we needed to know earlier on. So first question is treating PMS the same as treating period pain? If not, what's the difference?
Mm-hmm. So PMS, I would say technically is different than period pain, because PMS stands for the time before your actual period. And then if you're experiencing period pain, more or less it means your period came. So they are different, but I would say usually you still need to be working on inflammation, because inflammation is the reason PMS is happening, and then so is the cramping. So often, if you're working on like balancing out, let's say, PMS symptoms, usually the period pain should reduce.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what role does turmeric have in helping us during?
Hmm. Yeah, actually, and that's one herb. That's another one of my favorite herbs. That's like it's just one of those herbs that does like a million things, and it can be super beneficial. So turmeric is great because turmeric is a natural anti-inflammatory. So it is something that, again, depending on if it's the right one for you, it can be helpful. And with something like turmeric, that's an area where it's like, yeah, it is good for you to check that it is right for you, because sometimes if you have things like gallstones or issues with your gallbladder or with digestion, turmeric might not be the best thing for you and can aggravate stuff.
Really? It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I had surgery earlier this year on my knee, and I was drinking turmeric tea like crazy just to get that inflammation down in my body. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to see that it's, really penetrating a lot of different areas. If you don't have those issues, which I didn't know about. So that's great to know. Um, and do you see a trend of periods starting earlier in girls, and nutrition, inflammation, etc., impact that start?
That is a great question. I'm seeing that one by Debbie. Yes, it is. There is a trend that's puberty is starting a lot earlier. And I don't think we know the exact answer, but I have a couple of like personal theories. One of them being, yes, it could be from inflammation because when we think about it, think of all the different types of like processed food that's on the market that a lot of kids are exposed to or even marketed towards. Where you think of all the kids cereals, a lot of it is it's a lot of sugar. And it's unfortunate that they're marketed to kids because then kids are eating that on a day-to-day. Inflammation happens, and that's just like one example. So there's that part. And then another part is plastic. So a lot of our world is full of plastic. So we cook with plastic or we drink out of it, or sometimes it's in like food containers. And plastic, the parts in plastic can act like a fake estrogen. So that fake estrogen could start turning on our cells when we personally didn't ask for them to get turned on. So I'm thinking that with plastics, that's probably a big trigger of early puberty because plastic is just it's just everywhere. So if we're not conscious of our like consumption of things in plastic, especially if we're pregnant or around or have little children, then it could start influencing their hormones.
It's crazy. I spent some of my time living in North Carolina, and
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that at a young age, when I was in middle school, the girls looked way more advanced than I did. As a Canadian
Yes,
person, and I think it's a lot to do with the hormones that are also pumped into their chicken.
yes, that
You
too.
know, in their, I'm assuming it's in their milk as well.
Mm-hmm.
And those things, I was shocked to see like kids with like full mustaches in sixth grade, seventh
Mm-hmm.
grade. And I
Yeah,
was like, where am I?
yes.
So
I've heard that as well, or I've seen that, and it's hard. And I don't know if there are any Americans here, and I'm not like judging or anything, but just from like an observation, it seems like people in this, or many people in the States, enter puberty a lot sooner than Canadian counterparts. Now, I don't know the stats on that, but this is just from like anecdotal observation, where I think, yeah, I think food and our physical environments have such a huge influence on hormones.
definitely.
Mhm.
Now, I have one question here that says, any advice on navigating balancing traditional medicine and other alternative therapies? Because not all medical doctors support natural therapies, and so it can often be a challenge to
Yeah.
navigate.
I think it would depend on what medical interventions you're having. I'm not sure who answered the question or asked the question. It will depend on the medical intervention. Where, yeah, like sometimes there is could be a legit concern whether, let's say, certain herbs interact with certain medications. But if you're under the guidance of a naturopath, like a licensed trained naturopath, then usually they make sure they check that out before recommending that stuff. Where I understand, like it could be a challenge, especially with doctors. If you tell them they're seeing a naturopath, depending on the doctor, sometimes they won't care. Other times they might kind of like write you off. Where really and truly, that's their perspective. It can be uncomfortable, and it can feel like you're not feeling supported, but that's just more of an indicator of their own personal preferences and their level of knowledge, not necessarily it being a right or wrong thing.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of times we look at doctors, like I have one in my family, so I could say this. We look at doctors as like the people that know it all, and they're people too, and they make their own mistakes with their own health.
Yes.
So I think it's really important to put your health in your own hands, as
Yes.
long as it's obviously healthy and staying
Yes.
great
Yes.
like that. But I think try what works best for you, because a lot of times, I was raised to think that traditional Western medicine was the way to go. And then slowly but surely, I started taking Advil a little less. I would take like, unless I was having a debilitating migraine, I would try every oil and everything, rub it on my head, whatever I had to do before I took medicine. And I think that's just a testament to the industries here and how we need to kind of move away from the industry standards.
Yes, and that's exactly what you're saying. Where really, yeah, like what the comments are saying too. You really have to be the CEO of your health and take it into your own hands, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's experiencing those things, and you're going to be the one that's putting those things in your body. So it's best to have what we call an informed decision, which means you have all of the information and it's presented to you, and then you make that choice on what you think is best for you.
Definitely. So somebody asked, other than turmeric, what are some great anti-inflammatory foods and herbs to ingest?
So another really good one is ginger. So ginger and turmeric actually run from the same family. So ginger is another really great anti-inflammatory. And then another really good one is a herb called boswellia, which is also frankincense. That's another really good anti-inflammatory. And it's quite big in Ayurvedic medicine, where in India and Ayurveda, it's been used a lot.
So when you find it in Canada, would you usually find it in pill form?
You can find it in both. So yeah, like a lot of these things, if you go to health food stores, yes, you can find them in capsules. With like, if you wanted more of like the raw herb or a powder herb, boswellia, you probably wouldn't find that way, because it's something called like a resin, which is like this hard, almost like these hard little crystals.
Okay.
So that one you probably would have to find either as like a liquid or a capsule. Turmeric and ginger, those like you can use them with culinary, like you can find them in grocery stores. With both turmeric and ginger, sometimes, so it's great to have it in our food, but sometimes we need to like up the ante, where you might actually need to have it in what I call a therapeutic dose, where you might need to have it in a capsule or a liquid, because it gets concentrated down into like this super concentrated product.
Okay, great to know. I think whenever I make like my fresh pressed juices at home, I always put either ginger, turmeric, or all those things. I'm like, ooh, I'm like healing myself. But it's good to know that the pill form is also an amazing way to go.
Yeah, and you still are healing yourself with food. Like food is still
Yeah,
very.
you're right. You're right. So, what are your thoughts on fever grass?
Fever grass. So that one, to be honest, it's not one that I've personally used. So that's not to say that it's not good. It's just something that I don't have experience with. Because
Mm-hmm.
with herbs, there's so many herbs, where even in school we learned a lot of herbs, but again, there was only a certain range that we could have learned. And that's something that I want to start expanding my knowledge, because like I was saying before, I'm of like West Indian descent. Like my family's from Guyana, and there's a lot of herbs in Guyana that I would love to learn. But I didn't learn that because I learned in North America, where I went to school. So
Makes a lot of sense. Somebody asked, does soy increase estrogen production? And I do remember hearing this. My mom started me with soy as a baby, actually. She tried
mhm.
breastfeeding, but the pain, and she was a young mom, so she didn't really know to thug it out. So I had soy as a kid, and I do believe they say that it affects that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so soy is, I would say, one of those more controversy topics, because with soy, a lot of it depends on where it's coming from and the type. So that is something where I would say, like, if you can, always make sure you buy organic or non-GMO soy, because GMO soy is more, I would say it's almost like artificial. So we kind of don't even know what that can do. because what soy naturally does in the body is it kind of it can help our estrogen. So sometimes it could turn it on and sometimes it can turn it off. So traditionally, soy has been used in a lot of Asian cultures where they didn't have any negative effects by it. But there are some studies that have shown that consuming a lot of soy, especially if you're from North America, can influence your estrogen. So that one is kind of like a tough one where I would say if you do consume soy, make sure it's organic, non-GMO. Um, and traditionally it shouldn't affect your estrogen, but that one is just like the jury's out. We kind of don't know because it's been changed a lot from what it used to be years and years ago.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy how things change. Like, I'm sure my mom felt like, okay, I'm giving her soy, it's
Mm-hmm.
not cow milk, I'm doing the best thing for her. And then you never really know until you know, type thing. So that's a difficulty. So what are some other inflammatory foods other than sugar and dairy?
I would say the next big one would be gluten. That's like another controversial one where people are like, is this gluten thing real or is it not real? Where I personally and professionally would say that yes, it is. Because again, that's something where a lot of our grains and the way that they were produced have changed over the years, especially in North America with the way that they process grains. The issue with gluten is that for many people, it actually can be very irritating for our digestive tract. And
Yeah.
when that happens, that's when inflammation can start. And there have been some studies that have showed that gluten can give you some or influence you to have something called leaky gut. So, leaky gut, I don't know if you guys have heard of this term, but leaky gut is basically our digestive tract is very tightly controlled. And what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to, block things that aren't supposed to come in and then accept things that are. But when you have a leaky gut, it's kind of like free flowing, where that's not how it's supposed to be. And certain bacteria, viruses, or sometimes food particles that are too big start going into your body when they shouldn't be. And then that's what can trigger inflammation. So that's like a big connection between gluten and inflammation in our digestive tract.
Wow. So just the last two questions here. With ginger, what about eating it raw? How often should we do that?
Ginger, I mean, you could eat it raw if you can tolerate it. That would be like more like I would say personal preference, and then listen to your body because sometimes if you eat too much ginger, you can start feeling like burning, like a burning sensation. Because it is more like a heat and like heat provoking type of herb.
Yeah, my grandmother makes a drink out of ginger, and woo, it is, yeah,
Like,
definitely strong.
yes.
It's an acquired taste for sure. Now, last question. Any brands of for herbs and supplements?
Hmm.
Recommendations?
So that one actually, because I'm a naturopath, I wouldn't be able to recommend it unless they are person is my patient. Just because so there wouldn't be any type of like brand conflict, or I don't know that your Karen's asking, I don't know your health history,
Yeah.
where I would hate to, recommend something, you go out and buy it and something happens. So
Yeah,
unfortunately, I would want to, but I can't.
that makes sense. So that means, Karen, that you need to hire Dr. Steffe, and she will be able to get you that information. So we're going to work on getting you that information as to how to do that. So first of all, thank you so much again for really lending your ear and giving us your time to teach us, about this world of naturopathic healing. I wanted to let everybody know where we can find you. Can you let them know for us, please?
Yeah, so I would say I'm most active on Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is at dr.steffed. I post on there often. I'm on my stories, so you can DM me there, or you can find me at my website. It's steffed.ca.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for that. Now, everybody else, like I said, thank you so much for coming to us and spending your time with us. We're going to have some upcoming Villij Talks, but they won't be until September. I feel like I need some much needed self-care and rest, and I need to decompress for the last few weeks of uh, the 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 summer, really. We are going to have a podcast up with this episode, but guess what? We do have other podcasts, and we're really slacking on promoting them. But we've had some amazing conversations with great experts, and those conversations are up on Spotify and Apple. Dr. Steffe, can you talk to us about the promotion that you're doing now?
So as a way to say thank you and to help educate more women about their health, if you have an initial visit with me, I'm going to be giving 15% off.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's really great. And I think that, at the Villij here, we try to work on providing access to our community. And I really appreciate that your mission is quite similar to our own. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Now, if you like this conversation, we have a Villij fund that has been allowing, ourselves as founders to provide our community with mental health, and experiences in the yoga world. So we do a lot of great things with our Trap Soul Yoga at Home program, and we've been giving scholarships to women all over the world. So it's been a really great way to provide access at free of charge for the women who apply. So if you can donate, if you like this conversation, please do to support this initiative that we're working on. And last but not least, we have created some Villij teas. I'm wearing mine right now. It's honestly, it's great to see it finally come to light with our slogan in the back. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it says, "You deserve to be well." And I think that's something that we need as reminders as women of color. It's really important, and we do deserve to be well at all times. So we're going to provide a 10% code for you all just for being part of our community. And it's called Community Care 20. So this is the code that you can use at all times in order to get teas for yourself and get teas for your family. I'm trying to be like, Master P or whoever else who trapped their stuff out of their out of their trunks.
Master P was the master at that.
Listen, honestly, goals. But anyhow, we really appreciate your time and we appreciate your support. And again, Dr. Steffe, I look forward to speaking to you again. We have to do something on female health in the future. So look out for that in the upcoming months.
All right.
Amazing.
It's been my pleasure. And thank you guys so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.